Welcome to the latest episode of the Blazing Musket Podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Pinzone, joined this week by the man now known as Sam Latoff, formerly Sam Minton. But still, however he goes by, whatever he calls himself, he is still the fearless leader of the Blazing Musket. And he is here to talk today with us about essentially whatever comes up over the next 40 to 45 minutes that is or loosely or not even really at all related to soccer in New England. But there is plenty of soccer in New England still to come this year, even though we are moving into the end of September and early October. Fall is upon us. Patriots season has started. There is one team whose season is pretty much over, but pretty much everyone else still has a lot to play for, and still has a lot to come their way in the next couple of weeks. So Sam, as we transition out of the greatest summer ever of soccer in New England into the greatest fall ever of soccer in New England, how are you feeling as someone who is simultaneously trying to keep up with all of these things all at the same time?
Yeah, I'm doing good, Thomas. It definitely it is a lot. I feel like similar to Revs fans, I'm happy that the final nail in the coffin and their season is over. Might be able to focus a little bit more on everything else that is going on in New England soccer. But like you said, the Revs season is pretty much effectively over. But it's looking like we should have a few teams, at least making the postseason, and at least one competing for a trophy.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could possibly have all three of the USL professional teams competing for a trophy, which isn't too surprising that RAFC is still in a position to make the playoffs, but for sure the fact that Hartford is in a cup final, I don't think anyone saw that coming. We had John Morrissey on recently, and he said that they're one of the biggest surprises across the entire league. Not just here in New England, and then of course Portland, all seemingly they've forgotten how to lose as well. They're on a really good run and are moving their way up the table. They've got games in hand. They might actually get some points from those games in hand, which is a bit of a rarity. So yeah, I mean it's all looking pretty good. But before we get to all the things that are looking up and up, can you get us up to date for anyone that missed it? What exactly transpired on Saturday night down in Hartford? Now, Hartford was playing Pittsburgh Riverhounds. They go on to lose that game 2-1, but that game came to an abrupt end a couple of minutes before it was scheduled to do so. So, what exactly went down Saturday night down in Hartford?
Yeah, so basically all of this, I worked with Oliver just to kind of get the editorial stuff on, but this is all, his reporting down there. He's a great reporter covering Hartford Athletic, but essentially, towards the end of the game, it was reported that Marlon Hairston and I believe Danny Griffin, had what seemingly was a conversation, whatever have you. And in that instance, Marlon Hairston got very animated, went to the ref, and what eventually happened is, some Hartford players essentially walked off the field. Some players ended up coming back. It wasn't like a full walk off, if you will. But like you mentioned, the game essentially ended up getting abandoned. It seems like both sides kind of came to blows, whether it was there, kind of, after going to the locker room. And so there is allegations, publicly from the club saying that there was racist language used, and that's kind of the reasoning for kind of players going off the field, the reasoning for Marlon Harrison, getting so aggravated. And as we're recording, these allegations, you assume that they are true. There's no reason, I would say, for Marlon Harrison to make it up. There's no reason for Hartford Athletic to take a loss when they can obviously use the points. It's serious allegations. It's unfortunately, even from the time that we've been covering the team, there was instances of alleged homophobic language used against a player. That never really came to anything. I believe there was some suspensions. It couldn't directly be tied to it. It's a real shame to see that. Oliver again did some great reporting. Went to the club, Hartford Athletic. They didn't give a comment outside of the statements they put out, and essentially saying they are calling for the league to investigate the racist language. he went up to Bob Lilly. Bob Lilly didn't offer any comment. Pittsburgh Riverhounds ended up putting out a statement of their own. So really now it's this weird limbo where we're waiting to see what the league investigates. You know, if there is an investigation and what will come of it. There has been some instances in the past where we have seen some suspensions for various derogatory language uses in USL. But it's just a real shame that that was a big night for Hartford. You had sellout crowd again. They're a team that's on the rise, and to have an incident like that in soccer today is it's just terrible. We see it in MLS. We see it. I mean, across the world. Sadly, obviously there's plenty of instances whether it's in Europe or what have you of racist language being used towards players. So definitely was terrible to see. Again, great reporting by Oliver on this, but right now it's just kind of a little bit of a wait and see moment.
Yeah, I mean it's always amazing to me that these types of things still continue to happen. That professional players still. I get it, okay, like heat of the moment, all that stuff. But I mean, there's just there's just clearly things that you can't say, even if you're in the middle of in a big game, even if you're pissed off, if someone's gotten under your skin, or you're trying to get under someone's. I mean, whatever it is, like there's just certain places that you don't go to. It's always surprising to hear that someone has gone to those places again. What I mean, the tricky thing though is right, like I can't imagine that this is like an easy thing for the league to investigate because they for first of all they don't want to come out and say oh well, hey, we don't have any like inclusive proof, so what do you want us to do? But on the other hand, if they are going to investigate it and do something, I mean, they have to have some basis if they are to hand out suspensions. They do have to have something to go on or a corroborated story or, it just seems like a really kind of icky thing for the league to have to step into. And I'd imagine that no matter, whatever they do, both sides of this aren't going to, one side's not going to come away happy, because Pittsburgh sounds like maybe they don't think that this is what happened and they stand behind their player. Hartford's obviously going to stand behind their player saying, well, like you said, this did happen. Why would anyone make this up, right? So it's just it's interesting to see how the leagues handle these types of things. I know we had that with a couple of years ago with Bobby Wood with the Revs. He got called something. It was racist towards Asians by Kai Wagner, who's a loser that plays for the Philadelphia Union. He got suspended, and then like MLS like wiped away the end of the suspension because it like carried over into like the next season and stuff like that. So it's just a really really tricky thing for the leagues to deal with. And again, it's just crazy that it's something that they even still have to deal with.
Yeah, and I think in that instance too, even though Kai Wagner was suspended, they didn't necessarily say that they had conclusive proof that he did use racist language. I believe they essentially just obviously again, why would Bobby Wood make this up? So they kind of they weren't able to find conclusive evidence, but they did end up suspending him. And I mean, it is tough too. You think of a league like the USL, they don't have the microphone, the production capabilities that I imagine MLS Season Pass and Apple have. So it's gonna even add to the difficulty there. And then further in Oliver's reporting, he did note that there was kind of some confrontations between fans. Those fans happened to be wearing Griffin jerseys, and according to eyewitnesses there, they said something to the effect of, "Oh, my son wouldn't do that," stuff of that nature. So it seems like
Yeah.
there might have been some family there. I believe the person who allegedly might have been involved actually was from Connecticut, so that's the reason they had family there. Oliver also noted that he didn't go away in the team bus, again, kind of alluding to the fact that he had family there, so he probably went with them. So it's a really difficult situation because you have that, on the field incident, but there was also some off the field incidents as well, kind of fan confrontation, and just the atmosphere seemed like it was very intense in the fact that obviously Hartford fans were upset when they heard what happened and were very anti the Pittsburgh team once they heard about that. So it's again just a terrible event. It's terrible if these things still happen, and it's going to be interesting to see how USL handles this because again, I don't know if they necessarily have to even just the technical capabilities to pick up the audio. It's, are you just going to end up going off of lip reading and what have you, or just kind of the testimony of Marlon Harrison and the individuals involved. So hopefully it comes to a conclusion quickly, because you don't want to overshadow the rest of this, the season, upcoming games. But there does have to be thorough look into what happened, and if it is does come out that something racist was said, there needs to be a heavy punishment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just kind of crazy that this whole thing also gets further, further complicated by the fact that the players, the players, members of his family are there, and like they're refuting it, because it's a small stadium, right? There's not like it's not like the families of the players are like up in like a VIP section, kind of separated off from everybody else. There's really nowhere to be separated from. I mean, even if you're in the VIP, the tents that they have there down in one of the end zones. It's again, it's not like an NFL or an NBA arena where the typical fan doesn't even come in interaction with the people that are there, with friends and family of the team and that sort of thing. But yeah, just a really kind of a crazy situation that puts a bit of a damper on what otherwise has been nothing but positive things to talk about with Hartford. Going on a couple months now. Even with that, okay, 2-1 setback to Pittsburgh. That still leaves them 1 point ahead of Pittsburgh. Hartford's they're sitting in fifth place, only a couple points off of fourth, only 3 points off of third. So potentially could still move their way up a little bit here, try and get a home game, early on in the playoffs. And in their games in the run into that, they had won 3 in a row, 6 out of their last 7 before then. So I mean, this is really the only kind of blemish, and not anything that has to do with them, but again, just it's the first time that we haven't talked about Hartford in a totally positive way in a couple of months now. But hopefully they're able to kind of put this behind them, because they do have they've got to go on the road Saturday to Colorado, play Colorado Springs Switchbacks, and I'd imagine they've got to fly home, but then turn around and they've got to fly all the way back out to Sacramento the following weekend for the Jägermeister Cup final on October 4th. So I mean, that their schedule seems to be kind of calming down a little bit now, where they seem to have survived this. I think they had 5 games in 15 days kind of thing, which they haven't always been able to get through. But where do where do you see them going from here? Like, John Morris, he seemed to think that they've got a pretty good chance against Sacramento. But do you think they're actually going to be able to? I mean, this would be a massive deal for them before the playoffs even start, to potentially already have a trophy winning season, which they've never had.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the fact that they have a potential to win their first trophy, they're gonna go all out in that USL Jägermeister Cup game. Will be interesting to see, how the team lines up for kind of the upcoming game that they have in the league, because I think they really will want to focus on getting that first trophy. That would be absolutely massive again for a club that's largely struggled, I believe, outside of the COVID season. Haven't been able to really have any playoff success or any success really. And it's a kudos and credit to Brandon Burke, the work he's been able to do. You've seen a little bit of an increased investment, especially earlier in the year. They were struggling to put out teams just due to numbers and injuries that they had picked up. And when you look at the players, Anthony Saha seems to be having a great season. I think no one would have imagined that Hartford Athletic goalkeeper would have their own special limited edition T-shirt. But shout out to him. He was able to get it thanks partly due to his antics against Rhode Island FC. But he's been having a great season. Kyle Edwards off the bench has been great. One of their leading goal scorers, and I think obviously he was doing better before he got injured, but Jack Paniotu is a great addition for that side on loan. And it's funny in that USL Jägermeister Cup, it's gonna come down to 2 potential former Revs, and not former yet for Jack Paniotu, but Jack Paniotu on loan, and then Ryan Spalding out west. We could have someone Revs adjacent lifting a trophy, which Revs fans would very much wish they were doing in New England, but. Yeah, so I think really, Kyle Edwards, Anthony Saha, I think also the addition of Samuel Carregas started to pay off, and Mishi Nagalina has been great. Obviously, Mamadou Dieng is now getting starts up in MLS, so great to see. But he definitely kind of jump started, this spell of form. So he deserves credit, even though he isn't there anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is. It was always nice when you see former Revs, go on and have some success outside of New England. Like when Dwan Jones got traded, last year, pretty much was immediately able to go on and help Columbus, win the league's cup. He scored a goal for them, scored a penalty, in a shootout. Had some really good plays coming off the bench for them. Yeah, so it'd be nice to see Spalding and Panuta. It's been nice to see Panuta back on the field. Honestly, it was kind of starting to feel like, it was almost kind of a lost season for him because he was out for so long. But you know, it seems like they've got 4 games left to go, plus maybe 1 or 2 or 3, who knows, how many playoff games. So hopefully he can still rack up some appearances and finish off his year, on a strong note. And there's definitely opportunities for him now to come back into the Revs with whoever the coach is next year. Whereas I think if Porter was still there, I mean, I think he probably would have just been looking for a way out, like Noel Buck and like and many other players that were just looking to run away or were told to get off the bus. So, but yeah, no. So it'll be interesting to see. I really do hope that Hartford can go ahead and pull off that victory and lift the Jägermeister Cup. We talked about this last year when Hartford was having a really poor season. That I think we talked in the off season that it would be better for Rhode Island fans in the long run if Hartford was also like if both of these teams are good playoff level teams, then those games when they play each other are going to be more impactful than just, oh yeah, it's a local rival. Like you don't just want to just beat up on your big rival. Try and call it a big rivalry where you're always ahead in the standings, you're always winning. That whole thing's got flipped on its head this year. Rhode Island, they find they're in 8th place. They've won 2 games in a row, so they seem to have recovered a little bit here. Things have been looking a little iffy through the summer months. But I think the issue, from what I understand down in Rhode Island, is they're not really scoring that many goals. In their last 2 games were, a 1-0 win at home to Indy 11, and then a 1-0 win away to Miami FC. And then before that, they lost 1-0, won 1-0, lost 3-0, won 1-0, tied 0-0, won 1-0. So I mean, it's just, you can say that look, I mean, it seems like their defensive record is pretty strong. But have you seen anything in recent weeks that makes it seem like they're going to break out of this ability to either score no goals or 1 goal?
Yeah, I think, maybe just, looking at the goal scoring, maybe JJ Williams is someone who's going to be able to kind of unlock some of that, but I really think it's just going to come down to their defensive efforts because whether it be JJ Williams, I think you look at the acquisition of Maxi Rodriguez that largely has not paid off. He was really expected to be their game changer, and I think when you look at assists, when you look at goals, that simply hasn't been the case. Partly again, maybe that's due to the guys up top, not necessarily performing as well. Again, JJ Williams, I think obviously the biggest one. Up top is Albert Dikwa. I think largely Dikwa's time hasn't been a success. So I think they really need to go out and get some high caliber striking talent in the off season, whenever that is. And I think you're gonna have to reevaluate Maxi Rodriguez's role, and I think maybe invest in the midfield a little bit more. Obviously, Clay Holstad's a guy who can just launch a goal from anywhere, but I think as a true midfielder, true game changer, I don't know if he's that guy. Amos Shapiro Thompson has had maybe a good season, but not great. He has been someone who they've been able to rely on to make some plays, but not really. So I think this was maybe a wake up call for Rhode Island this season. I think they realized, oh, maybe things aren't going to always be that easy. We're not just going to be able to take the league by storm. I think Koke Vegas, has largely been a key part of that captain, and I think really his goalkeeping efforts have been huge for Rhode Island, especially when you look at their inability to score. If you have poor goalkeeping, that's really going to ruin you. So I think that deserves credit. Maybe some of the defensive efforts, guys like Frank Nargis, Alder Sanchez. He's been able to get involved in the attack, but also too, I think his acquisition and his ability has been well. So I think it really is going to come down to if they can unlock J.J. Williams. I think Albert Diqua, I don't want to say he's a lost cause, but when you look at his performances the last 2 seasons, they haven't been great. So I don't know if you can rely on him. And I think if you're able to somehow unlock Maxi Rodriguez, maybe then RAFC could make a run. But there's definitely the potential. I wouldn't be surprised if they make the playoffs. It might be a little bit of a shock if they didn't. But I think once they get in, I don't think it will be a long run. Obviously, once you get into the playoffs, anything can happen. One goal can be the difference. But as our former friend Caleb Porter used to say, the margins they are extremely thin, whether it is MLS or any sort of soccer. So I think if you're going to single-handedly rely on 1-0 wins, that's not necessarily the best way to play soccer or to pick up wins. So I think it's going to be really crucial to see what J.J. Williams does and also to Maxi Rodriguez. And a name I haven't mentioned is Noah Fujon. I mean, he was absolutely tearing it up last year. Again, hasn't been able to do that this season. Obviously, also too, RFC has struggled with injuries, but I really think this season was a wake-up call for Rhode Island FC. Things aren't always going to be that easy, and we're talking about new head coaches in New England. I think Connor Smith would have been someone that could have been someone that the Revs maybe thought to look at, but I think he maybe also too got a wake up call and some learning lessons, for his early career as head coach.
Yeah, I think Connell Smith might be. You might be ready at some point. Maybe at the end of last year, a lot of people thought, well, if he does it, if he does another year, like he just had, where they just get better and better and better as the year goes on, then then maybe the Revs would be a spot for him. Obviously, he played for the Revs, so he has that. He said he really enjoys being up in New England. I mean, it's like you're kind of already halfway there. But yeah, after this season, maybe say, well, to me, it seems like Brendan Burke would be the more likely of the two. I mean, he's been able to turn Hartford around, which it didn't seem like they had. Didn't seem like they had a steering wheel for a long time. But he seems to have found a way to get them going. The thing about Dequa that is interesting is when they signed him prior to last season, there was a ton of excitement around that, justifiably. He was the leading scorer in the league, and he was kind of looked at as, one, a statement that this team is really serious about putting a good team on the field straight away, but two, like, this guy's a sure thing. Like, there's no way that this guy isn't going to come in and score goals, because that's just what he does, and it hasn't really been the case. And then Maxi Rodriguez, we've talked about Maxi Rodriguez, I think 3 or 4 times on this show already, which is a little bit more than the contribution that he's given this year probably deserves. But it's just, again, that looked like another sure thing. Like, that he's a known quantity. Everyone knows what he's capable of in this league for several years, and yet it's 2 guys 2 years in a row that look like sure things that really haven't been.
Yeah, I think, especially with Maxi Rodriguez in Detroit seemed like someone who had a lot of flexibility, kind of freedom to roam. I remember, talking to him before the season, and he kind of talked about that ability to kind of roam and kind of just be able to try stuff. And, obviously in Connor Smith's system, lots of emphasis kind of on both sides of the ball, pressing. And, for Dequa, it almost seems like it would make more sense for him to perform well because coming from a Bob Lilly style of play, that seems like it would be, a perfect kind of leaping off point. But I think a lot of it just comes down to putting a team together and kind of the chemistry. For Maxi Rodriguez, I would say he was really the guy in Detroit. So coming to a Rhode Island FC team, I think he was expected to be the guy. But when you have Albert Diqua, former Golden Boot winner, there is necessarily kind of an adjustment period and realizing that, oh, I don't necessarily have to do everything on my own. There is someone I can lay it off to, but I just really think it comes down to gelling together and, as much as just a change of scenery can be good, kind of having to adjust to a new coach, how a new coach operates, how he wants to play. It can definitely affect players, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that Connor Smith has his dedicated style of play. But I think when you have those margins that are so thin, you do have to kind of question, is there any tweaks? Is there anything I can make to maybe unlock some of that scoring? Um, but I think again, largely, if I'm a Rhode Island FC front office guy, aka Connor Smith, if I look at Albert Dikwa and Matthew Rodriguez's performance, you really have to question if it's time to move on from them or if it's time to maybe acquire players that make it so that the pressure isn't on those guys to be performing night in and night out. If you can help them out, get some depth in the midfield, have a guy like JJ Williams performing well, there might not be as much pressure and they can play a bit more freely. So it's definitely very interesting. And again, like you mentioned, they seem like surefire candidates. I would say personally for me, when I saw they got Maxi Rodriguez, I'm like, oh, Rhode Island FC is going to go back to the championship.
Yeah,
He was
yeah,
someone I thought that could not be a miss, but I think it's just a testament to being under a new head coach, being in a new style of play, being in a new environment, just how things can't always be a home run.
yeah. I mean, the funny thing too is I'm sure Detroit would probably love to have him back. They're down in seventh, which is I don't think that's where they expected to be. Going into this season. So I think maybe they were. I'm sure they were disappointed to lose him in the first place, but they've also really struggled to score goals, to create chances, open things up. So it seems like Maxey hasn't really been able to move on from Detroit, and Detroit really hasn't been able to move on from him either. Again, now look, that benefits Rhode Island and potentially Hartford that Detroit is struggling. But it's always interesting when you look at somebody doing well somewhere and you think, well, for sure that's transferable to just about anywhere else. But it's soccer's it's interesting that way. It's not always that simple. Rhode Island they have a bit of a tricky schedule. They are only at home two more times in their last five games, and their last two games on the road they have to go to North Carolina and New Mexico United, who are both playoff level teams. They're both in like that fourth, fifth kind of area, which going in the last day, okay, even if you have it locked up, the difference between fourth and fifth, or even third and fourth, is a home game or an away game early on in the playoffs. So it does kind of feel like Rhode Island, these next three games, two out of the next three are at home. They really need to try and get as many points as they can. But I mean, you think they're going to end up coming in, above the playoff line, second year in a row?
Yeah, I think it would be pretty difficult. I know they get the Las Vegas Lights come to town. I think they should hopefully be able to pick up 3 points there. And I think, traditionally, and by traditionally, I mean last year, Rhode Island really started to pick things up come the end of the season. So I think maybe all this added pressure, sometimes it can break people, sometimes it can kind of propel teams to play high above, what they performed earlier on. So I think, they might sneak in. I don't know if they'll have a long run, but I do think they will make the playoffs.
Yeah, yeah. I just mentioned that. They've got their next three is El Paso. They're in sixth place in the West. Then Las Vegas Lights are all the way down in 11th place in the West. They only have 25 points from 25 games, and then they have Tampa Bay, who also, all of a sudden Tampa Bay is not very good either. They only have 26 points from 26 points from 25 games. So the next three, sixth place, 11th place, 10th place, you figure they've got to try and get, if not all 9 points, at least seven out of those three. Like I said before, they go into those tricky. There's two really difficult games coming in the season. But yeah, I think they'll get in. I mean, it seems like they have a lot of quality on that team, and if you're not giving up a lot of goals, then you don't have to figure out. You don't have to figure out a ton to look. Two. If they won a game in the next couple weeks, 2-0. 2-0's got to feel like 4-0 to them. With how much they've struggled to find the back of the net. So yeah, we'll have to see. I'll have to see how that goes. See if it's just funny. We're talking about Hartford kind of being a sure thing, and Rhode Island having a little bit of work to do to make sure that they get in. But we do know that the New England Revolution will not be in the playoffs. This is the second year in a row. It's the third year out of four. This pretty much locks them in to have not won a playoff game. So I think you have to go all the way back to 2020, the last time they won a playoff game. So tough times for the Revs. They did make a move to show that they have a pulse and they're aware of what's going on. They fired Caleb Porter. I guess it was only last Monday, but it feels like
Oh, it feels like an eternity, man.
it's been a bright, sunny 8 days for sure. They have Dor Terjemon is going to finally make his debut. This weekend they signed another striker that is, he's got to be the, I don't know, the third, fourth guy in the last couple of years that's supposed to come in and start banging in goals and get this whole thing turned around. But aside from enjoying the bad man being gone and Terjemon coming in, what else is there to look forward to here? They've got 3 games left, no playoffs. So what is it that we have to tune in for the last 3 weeks?
Yeah, I think probably the largest thing is the simple playing of the kids. I mean, seeing someone like Alan Oyerwoff uh, get MLS starts, I think is very important. He's someone who came highly touted from Africa, left Uganda to go to England to kind of train in some academies. And I remember in the offseason when he was acquired, I'm like, it's a bit out of left field. Just didn't necessarily expect it. Obviously the Revs have had some great African players, but to sign an African player so young when largely just played in his native Uganda, he didn't play and come up in the European League or what have you. It was interesting to see, and I mean, so far those first 2 starts, I don't think he's necessarily been like the best 8 in the world, but I do think he's shown that he does belong at that level, that he can play at the MLS level. He's looked calm on the ball. He's been able to also kind of be physical and not get pushed around. So seeing someone like him get minutes, we saw Eric Klein. Obviously, it was about like literally 1 or 2 minutes, but get off the bench. I think seeing someone like him potentially get a start would be great. And then looking at some of the Revs 2 guys and some of the younger players, whether it's Sherrod George, Liam Butts, I would love to see Marcos Diaz get a call up, but I believe due to international roster rules that might be a little bit more difficult. Javor Darbian has been great on the wing for Revs 2. So I think really what Revs fans, but Revs 2 fans, if there is any specific Revs 2 fans, they can look forward to seeing some of these young players play. And obviously, when it comes to Dor Turgeman, I think, don't know if he'll start this upcoming game. I think, ideally he should, just because you want to get him as much minutes as possible. But seeing what he's able to do, I mean, you mentioned it. The Revs really, the last 2 strikers they've gotten, I think, in the post Gustavo Bo and Alan Buxa era, once those 2 players were both gone, you had Giacomo Vrioni. That did not end well, as we all know. Leo Campana, not looking great, injuries, and just really inability to consistently score. So I think it's not about Dor Turgeman coming in and scoring hat tricks. I think it's as simple as him scoring, a goal, kind of building some momentum. Obviously, the season will end. You'll kind of have exit interviews and what have you, and he'll probably go back to Israel unless he's really looking to kind of build a quote unquote camp here and kind of, get entrenched in Boston. But I think those are really the 2 things: what Dor Turgeman is able to do, what kind of flashes he shows, and then also too seeing some of the kids that are able to play.
Yeah, funny thing about Sherrod George getting called up is he only played like 150, 160 minutes with Revs too. It seemed like that might have been an opportunity for Liam Butts, but Liam Butts, his biggest issue seems to be every time he gets a run of goals, he then gets injured, and maybe they were looking, okay, this is an opportunity to bring him up, but we can't because he's hurt. He's
Exactly.
not. A lot of the Revs 2 guys, Butts in particular, Marcus Diaz, these aren't the youngest guys in MLS, next pro either. They're look, the other side of 21 is not old, but it is, when you're 22, 23, 24, that is a little on the older side for MLS Next Pro. That's probably the age where if you're not going to crack into the first team or you're on the verge of cracking on the first team, you should either be with the first team or on load in the championship. The championship is certainly a much higher level than MLS Next Pro, and you get to play in front of more than 100 people, most of which are your friends and family. You get to play in front of 3, 4, 5, 6,000 people and experience playing in really meaningful games. So it'd be interesting to see if any of those guys get an opportunity. And how much longer? Marcus Diaz, this is his fourth year with Revs too. Like, he's the leading. He leads them in this, that, and the other, and all. It's like, all right, but I mean, it's like at some point you've got to think, look, either the Revs are going to give him a chance, or or he's got to go somewhere else. I mean, he loves New England, which, okay, nothing wrong with that. We all do. But there's three other professional teams in New England that maybe you can crack on with one of those. But the Revs too, they are actually going to be in the playoffs, right? They've already clinched the playoff spot. So how many? I think they've only got a couple games left. So might we see playoffs in Gillette? Just not for the Revs.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to Revs too. I mean, really coming off a terrible season, and the fact that
Yeah.
Richie Williams was able to turn it around and really get some talented players. Kudos to the players and the coaching staff as a whole. You have Brad Knighton come in as well too. I think it's been great to see seen in net Donovan Parisi and JD Gunn kind of trade off minutes. It seems like Max Weinstein, he's kind of been put on the back burner. He's over in Estonia, but getting some professional minutes, which is very valuable. But like you mentioned, when it comes to some of these older players, someone like Marcos Diaz, for example, Stephanie Comber spoke with Diaz's agent, I believe, and apparently he might have some interest, over in the Middle East, someplace like Qatar. Also, too, I think some other clubs, kind of more located in North and South America. So he has interest. Obviously, it seems like you mentioned, Tom. He enjoys New England, but you can go to Hartford, you can go to Rhode Island FC to get some professional minutes, and I forget who it was. It might have even been Connor Smith. But when you're playing in the USL Championship, you're playing against grown men. You're playing, same in USL League One. You're playing against grown men. A lot of what MLS has become, especially MLS Next Pro, is younger players. I mean, the whole college landscape has really changed. Speaking with Chris Taylor, head coach of Vermont Green, he talked about it. Now a lot of the younger players who feel like they might have a professional career, instead of going to college, they're getting involved in the academies, and the academies are essentially feeding into MLS Next Pro sides. And when you look at the internationals coming over, instead of going to the academies or going to MLS Next Pro sides, they're going to college because you get a free education and you kind of get to put your name on the radar. So the college game has really changed, kind of been flipped on its head, and I think that's directly impacted these MLS Next Pro sides. So I think, Marcos Diaz, he's been able to really grow as a player, and I think really kind of get his name out there in kind of the United States landscape, and like his agent says, has interest elsewhere. So I think really it's time for him to maybe prove himself somewhere else. Colby Quinones up in Portland Hearts of Pine. You've seen someone like Nathan Messer kind of jump from USL Championship or USL League Two to USL Championship, USL League One. Luckily, the kind of American soccer landscape has kind of provided this infrastructure where you don't have to be locked down to an MLS club. You can kind of build a career for yourself outside of that.
Yeah, I mean, even at the D2, even at the D2 level, I think it was. It might have been 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. But like the D2 men's national champions, they basically played. I think they played 17 or 18 players, and like 15 of them were from. I think like 15 of them were all from Spain. It's just like
Mm.
a friend of mine that I used to coach with. He coached a player that ended up there, and he was on the team, but like he obviously wasn't from Spain. He was from Massachusetts. So yeah, the whole college soccer landscape is it's pretty crazy now. How it's kind of, like you said, it's kind of all switched around, where you have European players going to American colleges, and then you have American kids going into academies. Which is kind of a complete 180 from how things were 10 years ago. But yeah, and of course the Green are not really up to much these days. They've got another 6 or 7 months until they come back. They seem to kind of come out and play the best time of the year, and then as soon as fall starts to approach, they go away and they make us wait, through the long, painful, dark winter until they reemerge. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see, what they look like next year. And then also next year, the Boston Legacy, they are really trying to learn to love Gillette Stadium in Foxborough. I saw that they had the new head coach. Right, they brought her out. They showed her the field, set up for American football, which I'm sure she might have thought was an odd choice. You've brought me here to this mecca of soccer to show me what it's all about. On a week when the New England Patriots are the home team, so I don't even really get to see what it looks like when it's set up for the sport that I coach. But anyway, they are really giving it a go. They are really trying to sell that this is going to be great. Uh, so, is it going to be as great as they're making it sound? Is this? Are they just hoping? And then we also found out in a backwards way, as we typically do with anything that happens with the Revs, that they'll be playing, apparently be playing on grass for 3 months next year.
Yeah, so it was funny. Jackie Contreras, great reporter for us covering Boston Legacy FC. She like mentioned it, and I was almost like, you might have to do a whole story on the fact that they're gonna be there's grass and when it will come in, because like Reds fans love this, eat this up. So it was definitely big news to hear that the fact that the Revs and Boston Legacy FC, will play on grass. It was really touch and go. Didn't exactly know if the first team, the Reds would even get a chance to play on grass before it eventually gets torn up. It seems like there's going to be tight windows. Once the World Cup ends, I imagine it gets torn up rather quickly. I imagine, I believe there was already recently a concert booked for post World Cup 2026 at Gillette Stadium. So I imagine the Crafts will want to recoup revenue, quote unquote, loss after not being able to host a bevy of concerts. But it was interesting to see, Felipe Patau, seems very high on Gillette. Same with Dome, seems very high on, being able to play at a, quote unquote, a world class facility in the sense that, obviously it's built for, the Patriots. You have such a large stadium, but, it is taken care of nicely due to the fact that the Patriots are there. So you do get the benefit from that. And it was interesting, Jackie also reporting that they're looking to sell out the entire lower bowl, which, I believe that approximates to around 30,000 seats. And I believe, the Revolution don't even typically do that. If you go to a Revolution game, for example, above the Optum Lounge, kind of behind where the banners are, that side of the field. Sometimes for certain games they won't sell that. It looks like initially, at least, Boston Legacy is going to try and bring in massive crowds. Which, if they're able to do that, I think that's a massive success. I mean, for a first-year NWSL club to potentially bring in 30,000 fans, I would dare even say for one game, massive success. But I think it's going to be very difficult for them to do that. Maybe you're able to pick up on some Res fans who are like, oh, let's check out the new team. They're playing at Gillette. If you're looking kind of central Western Mass instead of having to go to Boston, you go to Foxborough, it might make a little more sense for them. But I think if you're trying to tap into that Boston fan base that you're eventually going to have, I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So I'm very interested to see how those ticket sales go. I mean, obviously, I think there's going to be a supporters group there who's going to be there no matter what. I think they'll have to maybe rename the fort to whatever they would like. Maybe the Swan's Nest. I just came up with that right now. Don't even know if they lay a nest. But I think there'll be a passionate fan base. But in terms of being able to fill out that stadium and make it its own, I think that will be a little bit more difficult. But they have been able, kudos to them to attract some really talented players. Obviously, whether it's kind of NWSL players, attracting someone like Annie Carriage, who's currently on loan at Club America in Mexico, Barcelona. I mean, it seems like they're building a solid squad. Obviously, a lot of names need to happen, and I think they have a solid head coach in Felipe Patau. I mean, a Benfica head coach is always going to be good. But I think, how they will succeed in Gillette Stadium, I think it's to be determined. And I think it could go very well if they're somehow able to get groundswell of support, but I think it could also be poor if you're having, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 fans. That might look good in a white stadium, but in Gillette Stadium, it's just going to be a completely different atmosphere.
Yeah, I mean, that is really the challenge, right? I mean, you and I have both been at Gillette Stadium in, you know, early to mid March or even into April when if it the weather is iffy at best. I mean, there's been times there where my wife and I have had on everything that we own, blankets, electric foot warmers, hand warmers, and it's but there's not that many. There's not that many more of us out there. It's like the announced attendance is like 12,000. It's like there's no way there's 12,000 people out here. It's tough. It is tough to get out there in those months, whether the team is a good team or a mediocre team or whatever the case may be. So yeah, I think it's a difficult situation for them to navigate. But they don't have any choice. They've got to come out and be positive about it, because that's kind of the game, right? Like, you've got to market this, you've got to sell it. It's your first year. You've just got to find a way to make this work. And what's interesting is they've got to find a way to make Gillette work on grass prior to the World Cup. Then whatever happens during the World Cup, then they've got to make it work into the summer, where maybe the schedule gets a little crowded with the Revs, the Patriots preseason game, Patriots games themselves. I think they're trying to get Ed Sheeran in, which apparently people pay money to listen to him. They're trying to get other artists in there. If Taylor Swift goes on a tour, I mean, Taylor Swift could sell Gillette Stadium out for a whole month if she was so inclined. Whereas the Revs and Legacy probably can't. So it's a challenging first year. I think, like you said, though, I think the biggest thing will be is, let's say they do get some fans that Gillette is convenient for. Okay, but now you've got to convince them to go into Boston and park and walk or take a shuttle or ride a bike or I mean that's like a whole foreign concept to what you have to do to go to go to Gillette. You just turn up in your car and then you really can't miss where the stadium is. You just walk in the general direction of it. Do they have the Legacy? Do they have a supporters group already?
Yes, they do have a supporters group. I don't think they formally have a name yet.
Oh, but
But
there's
yes,
like a
they had it like from the jump. I mean, I think
oh
even before Boss Nation, I believe they had a supporters group. So yeah.
oh all right, well, let's go. Yeah, I hadn't heard that because like I know like RAFC, they were out, they were cutting promos like 9 months before the team even started. I think the Durango Union, kind of got started pretty much on day one as well. But that's good. I mean that helps, finally getting to Portland here, saving the best for last. Honestly, finally got up there on Sunday night to go to a game. Obviously watched on TV, it looked like a pretty good scene, pretty good atmosphere. But seeing it in person was, I mean, it was something else. I mean, look, the Vermont Green, great experience, right? About as good as you could possibly get for 2,500 people. I can't fathom a better atmosphere, at a high school stadium with everyone's kind of crammed in there, 5,700 people. They've got to do a lot just to get set up on game day, and then they've got to tear the whole thing down, by the end of that night when they're done. So for a temporary thing that they've got to roll out, do this for a day, take the whole thing down, clean it up, and get everybody out of there. I mean, really, really impressive. And yeah, I mean, we had a tremendous time. Even like the people around us were, the guy sitting behind us, like really funny, entertaining. Everyone there was like really engaged with the game. One of the guys sitting behind us said, "This is the second soccer game he's ever been to in person his entire life, and the only other one was in Barcelona, Spain." Right, so
Wow.
like that, that kind of like, okay, so this guy's not coming out here just because he got heavily discounted tickets, or a buddy just said, hey, this is a guy was only previously interested in going to soccer games in Barcelona, Spain, and here he is in Portland, Maine, on a Sunday night at 5 o'clock. But yeah, just a fantastic experience up there. And we look, my wife's from Maine. Her father still lives up there, so we try and get up there as much as we can. That's the easy part. Getting tickets to these games has been. I bought these like 4 months ago. It's almost impossible. But I mean, what has your impression been? What is Seth, and you guys have been up there a little bit more often than I have. But I mean, is this how it is? Like every time they're at home?
Yeah, I mean, they've been able to cultivate a great atmosphere, and I think obviously there's some growing pains and there's some challenges being in a high school stadium. I don't know how parking was for you, but I remember the first time I went up, it was a nightmare. Second time I think I was able to find parking in like a little parking garage nearby. So it can be a little bit difficult there. It is like literally just like dropped in the center of Portland in the sense that there isn't a lot of like on street parking, if you will, and if you get there, kind of close to kickoff, there's going to essentially be no parking. But I think when you think of the atmosphere, I think they've created a great atmosphere. I think they know their demographic. They're looking to bring in Mainers, and I think they've done a great job doing so. I think, shout out to the Rigo Union. They've created a great supporters group and kind of been able to get people involved that way. And I mean, I think they have probably one of the best supporters groups in all of, New England. And I think too, just the play on the field. Obviously, when you have a new club, have new players, new roster, I think it was going to take a while. But really, I think we're seeing what the team's really capable of. I mean, Ollie Wright, one of the best attackers in USL League One. The acquisition of Masashi Wada has been great as well. Nathan Messer seems to have really found a place where he can succeed in Portland, and I think he's done a great job. And then kind of in net too, Hunter Morse has really been key for Portland Hearts of Pine. So I think when you combine the fact that the team's really starting to find its form and the atmosphere that the fans and kind of the club have built, it's really built for success. And I think obviously similar to Vermont in some ways, maybe. If you start to perform well, people will wonder, oh, can we get our own stadium? Oh, can we kind of build this out? I think similar to Vermont, that will probably be difficult in the sense that if you want to keep the club in Portland, I don't necessarily know there's a ton of spots there. Obviously, you have high schools who use Fitzy for their own sports. So unless they're just going to get new facilities or kind of, maybe high schools combined or whatever, you're going to have to deal with making sure that all these maybe additions that you have also work for the high school. So I think it's kind of a challenge, but it's a good challenge to have. I mean, they're probably I know Seth has said it, the hottest team in New England soccer right now. And I think, with the atmosphere they're building, it's one of the best places to go see a game.
Yeah, yeah, and the style of play too. Uh, Bobby Murphy talked about he kind of plays this way anyway, but the fact that they're on this this narrow field, it's certainly one of the smaller fields in USL that you're going to see at the pro level. But they use that to their advantage. The speed of play. I mean, it's really fast-paced game. Whether they're pressing high up the field, their attacking play is it's quick and direct. It either happens or it doesn't happen, and then they go right into pressing again. And Naples kept the pace up pretty high as well. So I mean, as far as the entertainment factor of the game itself, it was great, and it's nice to see that again, I think you kind of criticize maybe Rhode Island for being a little slow and ponderous. The Revs, certainly for the last 2 years, have been kind of slow and ponderous. So it's easy for people to kind of drift out of the game when things don't seem to be happening rapidly in front of them. It's like, well, I probably can, carry on a conversation here for a couple minutes, or I can run and get a drink or get something to eat. I'm probably not going to miss anything. And it was only a 1-0 game, but again, it was just an end-to-end really, free flowing game that, like you said, you're trying to engage with your audience, right? The winning for sure, that is going to help. That's going to keep people coming back. But if you can just keep them constantly engaged with the playing style, I think that is a big part of it as well. And I don't know how much Bobby Murphy is concerned with entertaining people, but at the professional level, that is the other half of the deal. Like, yeah, you are supposed to play to win, but you are also entertaining people, right? People are spending money for entertainment on, whatever it is, Saturday night, Sunday night. And I think there is this expectation that you should be trying to entertain us and get a result. And, like you said, the Dorrego Union, they've already got the clap that they do before the game and at halftime, and they've got almost 80% of the stadium is engaged with that, right? So, like, right from the beginning. Just really, really, really good time up there. So hopefully I'll be able to go up there more than once next year. But like you said, like Seth said, their last 7 games, 5 wins, 2 draws, and no losses going back to August 2nd. They're all the way up in place. They're 4 points off of fourth with 2 games in hand. I mean, it's just really something else. Um, but the concern is, look, Rhode Island FC had a fantastic season last year, and then kind of slid back a little bit in year two. But do you think that are they going to be able to sustain this going forward? Like you look at guys like Ollie Wright or Masasashi Wada, those two in particular. You say like, well, for sure those guys are going to be playing, in the championship next year.
Yeah, I think, the USL League One too is just a league that has high levels of turnover. So I think with that, you almost kind of have to build in that you're going to have a lot of new faces, and that can obviously hinder, looking to build success year over year. I think, Portland fans are maybe holding on to the fact that there could be pro rel coming and that maybe you're able to hold on players with the potential for maybe them to make the leap to USL Championship. But I do think there's going to be high turnover. As much as Portland's created a great atmosphere. If you're a player and you have the opportunity to go to the USL Championship, maybe even MLS or Europe as well, just somewhere else, I think you can't really turn that opportunity down. So for guys like Ollie Wright, Masashi Wada, would be interesting to see someone like Michel Poon Andron. I think he's a player who he might not be flashy in the sense that he's scoring goals and letting up the stat sheet, but what he does in the midfield is very important for that side. As well as too, Nathan Messer again. I don't know if he would necessarily make the jump, but if he continues to put in some solid seasons, is he someone who would go back to the USL Championship? So I think it will be a challenge. I think just organizationally, they'll be able to find success just because of the market that they're in and how they've been able to engage the fan base. But when you look at the results, I do think there could be some challenges, and I don't know if the roster's heavily turned over. I think there could be, maybe a come down to form. Maybe after making the playoffs this year potentially, maybe they do miss the playoffs and don't have the best season. But I don't think all of a sudden fans are going to turn away. I think they've been able to build up that support where no matter what they're going to be there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like John Morrissey said, sometimes the difference between a higher budget League One team and a lower budget championship team isn't necessarily all that much. And he also felt pretty strongly that I mean they're just killing it, right? I mean they're selling out their stadium, which is not a is not a, it's not a given in League One. Their merch sales have been you know
Through the roof.
totally insane, through the roof. Like, so they might very well be a bigger budget team in League One. So maybe John was kind of saying like that difference between what they can offer and what you can offer in the championship. It might not be such a big difference in money. Where if you're really enjoying where you're playing, then maybe they can hold on to some of these guys, for a little bit longer. So it'll be again, it's been great so far, and it'll be great to see how it plays out from here until the end of the season. And then again, what's this all gonna look like next year, and how sustainable is it? But yeah, I don't think they could have had a better first season. And whoever thought it was a good idea to put a team in Portland, Maine, I mean, I personally would have thought, I mean, I think they're really going to be able to get that many people out there. But one thing that I heard people talking about, and Sean mentioned it as well, is when they started to explain to people, like people were like, okay, so like what team are they affiliated with? And Sean was like, no, we had to like tell people like, no, they're not affiliated with anybody else. This is a team for Portland, Maine, for Maine and nobody else. These guys aren't like getting paid or reporting to the Red Sox or the Revs or the Celtics or whatever the case may be. And I think that is what made a big difference to a lot of people. Like, this is Maine's professional soccer team. This is Maine's team, and people aren't just coming here for a little bit to hop off and go, go somewhere else to the parent team. So yeah, all good stuff, and again, be interested to see how this kind of all shakes out for the rest of the season. And of course, Sam, the best place to see where this all shakes out is the Blazing Musket, which of course you are the director and leader of, fearlessly as always. So what do we have any since last time you were on back in April? We still have, of course, Jackie Contreras doing a great job. Boston Legacy. Seth continues to cover the Revs. He covers Portland as well. Got Oliver placed down in Hartford. But who else do we have around? And have we added anybody since April that is now giving their time to produce great content for us?
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Liz McGowan. She's been helping out with our Rhode Island FC coverage. She's someone who's always out there. I'd be remiss not to mention Josh and I because he had to suffer through the horrible season in 2024 that was Revs 2. He's doing amazing Revs 2 coverage again this season. Luckily, he's been able to watch a much better team, so happy for him there. And essentially, just kind of looking to always, if you're listening and you're someone who's interested in writing, we obviously were able to add Ben Clements. He helped out with our USL League Two coverage, and he's been great also helping with college soccer. So if you are interested in soccer, feel free to hit me up, and if it works out for makes sense for us and it makes sense for you, maybe we can make some magic happen there and kind of help you continue to or start writing about soccer. But we've been lucky to have some great writers like you mentioned, Oliver. Andy is someone who's been able to do some great work. Yourself now, Tom, obviously with Caleb Porter gone, I think maybe you'll write a little bit, have motivation to write a little bit more.
Yeah, more than
And
more than once every 4 months now. Yeah, I feel the breath of fresh air. I feel compelled to watch games a second time to try and dig a little deeper into what happens. Same thing for Andy. Andy, I'm sure Andy really looks forward to being able to do some in-depth statistical research into things that are trending up instead of things that are
yes.
trending down. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and Jake Catanese does a great job, kind of giving us kind of previews of every Revs match, and also too, Sean's been great, kind of spreading our name out in Portland, Maine. But just really excited, like you said, for 2026. Obviously, the World Cup coming, and just Boston Legacy as well as just everything else. It's going to be a really busy year. So if you're interested in any one of the teams in New England, make sure to hit us up.
Yeah, and of course, like you said, Ben Clements, who's the intern for the show. I'm not sure if he's actually aware of that, but anyway,
He
and
is
then
now.
Dolan is he's off the injury list now, right?
Oh yeah, Dolan off the injury list. He's going to be covering. I know him and I believe Jackie are headed to the U.S. Women's National Team game in Connecticut versus Portugal. And then Josh also does photography for Revs too. I think he just essentially does it all for Revs too. We also have a photographer named Alex Roldan who covers RAFC for us, who's been amazing. And then we also have someone who's been helping out with Revs 2 coverage, Sam Nichols. She is going off to grad school in the UK, I believe, so she'll be leaving, but she's taken some great shots for us. So I really appreciate her help. And Brady King's been doing some photo and video stuff up in Portland, Maine. But yeah, we got a good team here, and we're gonna need it come next year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Next year is going to be yeah, it's going to be even bigger than this one if you can believe it. But yeah, definitely lots to look forward to. So yeah, so if you do not already check out the Blazing Musket on a regular basis, please do. And of course, if you are listening to the show, make sure to like and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts from. Please do leave us a review as well if you're enjoying the show and be inclined to leave us one. We really appreciate that, and help spread the word as well. We really enjoy putting these shows together. We love the audience that we've been able to develop, but we all, of course, always hoping to grow the show, grow the site. So please do continue to subscribe, listen, and spread the good word if you enjoy listening every week. And we'll be back next week with our well, I guess very late September, very early October roundtable. All the boys will be back in the studio for a good old time talking about how things in New England soccer are going. So we'll see you all next week. And as always, thank you for joining us.